Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for opening remarks by Councilmember Pete Festerson, District 1.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I thought I'd take this time just to make maybe two observations today before we start. One is that this is our first meeting since the city primary election, so I wanted to acknowledge those candidates for city office that were successful and also those that were unsuccessful. It's a lot of work to do something like that, and they're all doing it because they care about the future of this community, and so we appreciate that engagement. I also want to thank the voters of Omaha because there was a 50% turnout increase in the primary, and that's good to see as well from previous years, and we hope that continues in the general election. Secondly, I would just also want to welcome the NCAA back to Omaha this week. We have a major event, as you know, happening down at the CHI Health Center with the Final Four volleyball tournament from across the country, 48 teams in town. As you also know, this last year has been tough in that respect. I know our hotels and our small businesses have all suffered from the loss of some big-time events. Volleyball for sure, the College World Series for sure, basketball games for sure. So it's nice to see this get back on track this week. Even with the reduced capacity, it's expected to have about an $18 million economic impact on our community. So we're pleased to see that be restored, and we look forward to also welcoming the swim trials and also the College World Series again this June. Thank you.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Omaha City Council. We thank you for joining us today. As a courtesy to those in attendance and to facilitate the conduct of our business, we ask that you please turn off or silence all electronic devices. We have a couple of proclamations to read today, and I will go first with the proclamation honoring the Field Club neighborhood for Field Club Days and the Field Club Homeowners League. So if the representatives are here like to come up to the dais as I read this, I'd welcome you to do that. Don't be shy. Some of you, here's the dais here. That's fine. Some of them have been around since the beginning, so to speak. So I'll read the proclamation. Whereas Omaha's Historic Field Club was placed on the National Register of Historic Places as a historic district on November 15, 2000, and the Field Club Historic District was officially dedicated on May 12, 2001. And whereas Field Club is known nationally for its numerous historic and prominent homes and buildings, among them the jewel of Midtown, the Field Club of Omaha Country Club. And whereas the Field Club Residential Historic District consists of 328 houses and 16 square blocks, a flourishing and active neighborhood with neighbors and families who volunteer their time and resources to preserve the special and close-knit feel of the historic district. And whereas the Field Club Homeowners League was established in 1947 and is the longest-serving association in Omaha and Nebraska, and in fact, since 1966, the longest incorporated association, I believe, west of the Mississippi River. Whereas the Field Club Homeowners League holds several community events throughout the year to include an annual Independence Day neighborhood parade and luminary night, and whereas Field Club Homeowners League continues their commitment to protect the historic district's integrity and promote community safety and a welcoming atmosphere for all residents. And whereas Field Club Historic District is celebrating 20 years of being placed on the National Registry of Historic Places and kicked off its inaugural annual celebration on April 10, 2021, and now therefore be it resolved that the Omaha City Council hereby declares April 10 through April 17, 2021 as Field Club Days in the city of Omaha. In witness whereof, the Omaha City Council has caused the official seal of the city of Omaha to be affixed to this proclamation on the 13th day of April 2021. Congratulations, and if you'd like to come up and say a few words, Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Jerem. I'm John Fox. I'm the president of the Field Club Homeowners League, and I'm proud to be joined by several of our neighbors today, Bob Perrin, Mike Bednars, Laura Bednars, Annika Phillips, and Jeff Fox. These are all members who have been on the board for a long time, have been longtime neighbors, and had a big part of making us a historic district. So I thank you all.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Don't be shy. And John, I called you Jeff, and Jeff, I call you John.
Happens all the time.
These guys are the current force behind this field club
You know,
operation.
actually, our neighborhood, we're really proud of it. It's been around a long time, and it's the neighborhood that stayed through all the urban renewal projects, all the urban decay, and has been kind of the leader in allowing people to take care of their own homes and be homeowners and be a proud member of the community. So it's a wonderful thing, wonderful place to be. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you, and if anyone in the audience is listening or watching at home at TV, they have Field Club Days going on all this week, and there's activities going on. Your neighborhood was out in force this past weekend, and it's just a place that's alive and vibrant, and I congratulate you on this day.
Thank you so much.
Now we have another proclamation, this one to be read by Councilmember Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. It's my privilege to honor the Humane Society today. They're in my district, so I get the honor of reading this to them in honor of Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week. Nancy, I believe you're here if you want to come to the podium. Yeah. I'll get started as you approach here, and then we'll have a chance for you to give some remarks as well, and members of your team also. Whereas animal control laws contribute to the safety and well-being of animals by preventing animal cruelty, neglect, or other abuse, and by ensuring the safety of stray or abandoned animals. And whereas these laws protect our citizens from dangerous animals, nuisances, and ensure that pet ownership is properly regulated. And whereas the City of Omaha has designated the Nebraska Humane Society as its animal control authority. And whereas the Nebraska Humane Society has professional animal control officers and staff dedicated to public safety and humane treatment of our community's pet animals. And whereas NHS animal control officers respond to 34,000 calls and conduct 6,400 animal-related investigations in an average year. And whereas, as part of the city's animal control efforts, NHS staff oversees the city's licensing and vaccination requirements and shelters animals involved in animal control enforcement. And whereas the National Animal Care and Control Association celebrates the efforts of animal control professionals during Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week each year, now therefore be it resolved, the Omaha City Council hereby thanks NHS animal control officers and staff for its contributions to public safety and recognizes the week of April 11th through April 17th, 2021 as Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week. Thanks for all you do.
Good afternoon, Steve Glant, Vice President of Field Operations for the Humane Society. And I just want to thank you, Councilman Festerson, for reading that, and for everybody on the council for your support. With me is Christy Westfenning. Did I get that right? Close enough. She represents our dispatch function as well. And I'd also add that our dispatchers receive a little over 100,000 phone calls every year, and they do the the difficult job of filtering out which calls go to the shelter, which calls require emergency actions by our animal control officers, and they do great work there too. So I want to recognize them as well. I have Anthony Carrera and Becca Calkins. They are two animal control officers. And of course, Nancy Hintz, our CEO, does a wonderful job for the Humane Society. And then Kelly Brown is our field director for the animal control officers. So I would also add that a lot of the work they do is under very difficult situations, very stressful, very emotional. Things go on when they're interacting with the public, and they do a wonderful job. I'm also going to recognize in the back, I retired from the sheriff's office after 31 years as a captain, and I had under my command the canine officers, and they do wonderful work for Douglas County as well as Omaha Police. They have both of those units just do a phenomenal job for the public using their animals. So, but thank you again, and appreciate it.
Thank you. And I think I saw those dogs at work on I-80 the other day. So,
Yeah.
congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. They were not behind my car. Okay. Yes. All right. Madam Clerk.
Items 6 through 8 relate to the same project and can be considered together for Vistancia, located northwest of 210th and 4th Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 6, an ordinance to rezone this property from AG District and DR District to R4 District. Item 7, a resolution to approve the final plat. Item 8, a resolution to approve the subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 6 through 8 begin at this time. Are there any proponents?
Thank you, Mr. President. Brent Beller, 1140 West Center Road, on behalf of the applicant, Falcone Land Development, here for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion's passed 7-0. Items 9 through 14 can be considered together for Leavenworth Point Commercial, located southwest of 31st and Leavenworth Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 9, an ordinance to rezone this property from GI District to NBD District. Item 10, an ordinance to approve a PUR overlay district in an NBD district. Items 11 and 12 are resolutions to approve the preliminary and final plats. Item 13, a resolution to approve a special use permit to allow a restaurant in the NBD district. Item 14, a resolution to approve the subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 9 through 14 begin at this time. Are there any proponents?
Reagan Pence, Lamprey Nearson, 14710 West Dodge Road, 68154 on behalf of the client. We are proponents of the project, and we are here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 9 through 14 are approved, 7-0. Item 15, to consider a Class I liquor license application for Good Lookin', located at 4919 Underwood Avenue.
The public hearing on item 15 begins at this time. We have the applicant registered to participate by video conferencing, Christian Brabeck. Good afternoon, Mr. Brabeck. You're recognized.
Good afternoon.
You have to identify yourself by name and address.
Sorry, Christian Brabeck with Good Lookin' LLC.
4919 Underwood Ave?
Correct.
Thank you. And you're here happy to answer any questions?
Yes, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Are there any other proponents on item 15? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Mr. President, Christian, welcome to Dundee. We're pleased to see you get established there in a great spot. I thought you might just want to give a 30-second commercial for your new restaurant there, especially given the review you got in the paper today on your biscuits and gravy.
Yeah, I just saw that, and that was great to see that. So yeah, we are a breakfast and lunch spot. We serve a mix of what I would consider to be kind of an elevated Midwestern fare. So your biscuits and gravy, your chicken fried steak, then also some kind of creative lighter options. So some healthy breakfast bowls, some healthy salads. And yeah, currently open for breakfast and lunch, and just seeking this liquor license to kind of add that element to our business, and hopefully be successful in the long run as a restaurant in Dundee and bring a lot to the community as well.
Great, thank you. I think it is a missing segment we don't currently have in breakfast and brunch there, and I know it's already been quite popular. So very supportive, and we'll go ahead and move approval.
Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 15 is approved, 7-0. Item 16, to consider a Class L liquor license application for Lumen Beer Company located at 1433 South 13th Street.
The public hearing on item 16 begins at this time. We have the applicant, Daniel Brulette, registered. Mr. Brulette?
Yep.
Would you identify?
Hello,
Welcome. Go ahead and identify yourself.
my name's Dan Brulette, and I'm owner and manager of Lumen Beer Company.
And your address is 1433 South 13th?
That is correct.
Thank you. And I assume you're happy to answer any questions.
Of course, yep.
Thanks. Are there any other proponents?
No.
Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. We have a motion, a second. Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 16 is approved, 7-0. Item 17, to consider a liquor license addition application for Smitty's Garage Burgers and Beer located at 7610 Dodge Street to add an area approximately 100 feet by 8 feet. A is communication from the Planning Department regarding permits for the outdoor area.
The public hearing on item 17 begins at this time. We have Kimberly Lorman, the applicant. Ms.
Hello,
Lorman,
sorry.
go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Lorman. I'm the general manager at Smitty's Garage on 7610 Dodge Street.
Thank you. You understand that you have to apply for and get permits on this?
Yes, I do. I'm actually having some difficulty doing that, but I will figure it out.
Okay, well, if you need any assistance navigating the system, just contact our office and someone will get you some help.
Okay, thank you so much.
Are there any other proponents wishing to be heard on item 17? Any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Item 18, to consider special designated liquor license applications for the Broke Down Palace located at 8805 Maple Street for outdoor concerts on April 29th, 30th, and May 1st from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. with music ending at 1 a.m. each night with an alternate date of May 2nd, 2021.
Public hearing on item 18 begins at this time. Are there any proponents or the applicant? There's obviously time. There's no time to lay this over, and there's no one here. Why don't we put this at the back end of the docket in case they show up late? Yes, Mr. Festerson.
Thank you for that. This is my district, and we've had some conversation about this morning, even since pre-council. And I wouldn't be opposed to waiting until the end of the meeting to see if someone comes. But I will say that we've had events here before without incident, but these particular ones do cause me some concern. We have had some contacts from neighbors now that have had recent concerns with, I think, noise complaints and music at night. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth between this tenant and his landlord as to what's acceptable via his lease that is not reflected in this item right now. So at the very least, this would have to be amended to reflect that and to better reflect some neighborhood concerns. Absent all those things happening and absent the applicant actually being here today, I wouldn't approve it at all. make them start over and have that conversation with the neighborhood and with his landlord. So I put that out there for your consideration, either to dispense of right now or later in the agenda.
Yeah, and I would add to that sentiment while we wait for the applicant that I believe the finance department told us that they're in arrears in occupational taxes due to the city that remain delinquent for some period of time. And I see the finance department nodding their head up there. So why don't we wait? We'll come back to 18 before we recess or adjourn for the day.
Okay.
Consent agenda. Any member of the city council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the city council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the city council rules of order.
Any removed? Okay. The public hearing on agenda items 19 through 23 were held on March 30, 2021. We have a couple lights on. First, Vice President Palermo will be right with you. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to speak on behalf of 21. I know we had the public hearing last week, but Mr. Pesic wasn't here. Ross, if you want to come on down for a little bit, Karen maybe too, if you don't want to. Again, Mr. Catalan and others have been working on this for a long time, long before I was here, and it's finally come to fruition. So the driving force behind this BID in South Omaha is here, and he wasn't here last week, and I apologize. I didn't think we would need you, and I don't think we need you today, but I'd love to hear from you how this BID will help not only those that live in this area and work in this area, but those of us that represent this area.
Well, thank you, Ross Peshek, 4826 South 24th Street, Omaha, Nebraska, where I run my office, Peshek Law. South Omaha Business Improvement District has been something that a lot of people, a lot of community members have been pushing for many years. We're grateful to be the beneficiaries of all the work of our previous community leaders in terms of our city streetscape and a lot of major public infrastructure that has been created over the years. For us to be able to continue to maintain that, to be able to honor the past commitments and the work of the leaders in our community, we feel that the Business Improvement District is necessary to maintain what we have. We've been working together to make sure that we can put Mr. Palermo, Councilman Palermo, in a position with his colleagues to be able to advocate for our neighborhood, make sure we're receiving our fair share of city funds and other services. But in truth, the BID, I think, is going to be an excellent community organizing tool. The first order of business for the Business Improvement District on South 24th Street is going to be a spring cleaning and planning day on April 25th. So we're really looking forward to being a Business Improvement District officially. We're looking forward to the power that will confer upon us in our neighborhood to be able to organize for ourselves and do the things that we want to do. And we're looking forward to being able to empower our councilmen to advocate for us in forums that you guys are all going to be a part of. So we hope that you will vote in favor of the Business Improvement District, and we're really excited about what it can mean for South 24th Street and the proposed boundaries of the Business Improvement District going forward.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. And again, we've occurred many hurdles along the way, but you have found a way to get over them hurdles and make this happen, you and your significant other, because we know how this works. So
I apologize. My wife, Karen, is with me, and she does everything with me. And she's an accountant by trade and runs all the books and finances for everything that we do. And so obviously I wouldn't be able to do it without her.
Yeah, like many of us, the brains of the house.
That's right. That's right.
So anyway, again, I wanted to give credit where credit is due, and it's thanks to you that we're here at this point. So I don't believe anybody will have any questions. Thank you for coming down.
Well,
thank
all
you.
I would
sorry.
say is,
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Pesic is a lawyer by trade, as he said, and he's on the other side of a number of cases I have. And if he advocates as hard for this business improvement district as he does for his clients, this is going to be the best one in the city. I'll tell you that.
Well, I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now we have, we had some other lights on. Mr. Anderson, did you want to come down? I think Mr. Festerson was going to call on it.
I think Mr. Anderson's probably coming for the next items, but I was going to also comment on what I said last week on the South Omaha Business District because they're here this time. So I want to repeat a few nice things I said about them also. And that's absolutely right. Councilman Palermo's leadership to help get this done and the creation of a BID is so important in neighborhoods we've seen all across our city. And I've always thought a great fit for South Omaha too, and to continue to take care of the improvements you described, $2 million worth many years ago now that continue to need some refreshment and can keep the neighborhood moving forward. And the hard part's done. When you have a leader like yourself in the neighborhood, getting it done and creating this consensus around it is the most difficult part. And obviously you've done that because there is no opposition to this, even though there's quite an expansive area that you've included in here, which I think is a good thing too. So just wanted to add my 2 cents again with your work and reinforce my support here today too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harding?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to quickly add, I ran into David Catalan at the beginning of the meeting, and he reminded me it was some 7 or so years ago, I think, that there was a resolution first passed on the formation of the BID, and it just goes to show how hard work and perseverance finally it pays, and I congratulate Vinny for his work in getting this moved forward. Many of us have BIDs in our districts and have seen the successes that they can create and the enthusiasm that they can create for that, not only for the neighborhood, but for the entire city. So I look forward to the progress that the South Omaha BID makes in the future and know that it will add to the culture of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 19 through 23 are approved, 7-0. We need to pull 48.
Okay. The public hearings on agenda items 24 through 47 and 49 through 59 begin at this time. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or opponent. Item 48 has been removed from consent and will have its own public hearing. Mr. Anderson, welcome.
Now I'm ready. Kevin Anderson, City Mayor's Office, here for agenda item number 49. I'm actually here on behalf of the Metro Smart Cities Advisory Committee, effectively doing business as Metro Smart Cities Incorporated. Metro Smart Cities is an effort co-chaired by Mayor Stothert and Derek Leathers of Werner Enterprises. It consists of community leaders in business, higher education, and philanthropy, representing the greater Omaha area, including the cities of Council Bluffs and Bellevue. Metro Smart Cities came together to explore the use of technology and innovation in advancing transportation initiatives in the Omaha area. It adopted 4 guiding principles, including access to opportunity, seamless mobility, revitalization of the urban core, and public engagement and awareness of transportation issues facing our community. Metro Smart Cities is pleased to be acting as developer for the Harney Street Market to Midtown Bikeway Pilot Project. Through philanthropic support and partnership with Bike Walk Nebraska, Metro Smart Cities Incorporated will be covering the entirety of the cost of installation, operation, and maintenance of the protective infrastructure for a 2-way bikeway in the southern lane of Harney Street from approximately Turner Boulevard to 10th Street. The temporary pilot will run until September 30th, 2022, with an aim at collecting extensive data regarding the use, operations, and maintenance of the protective infrastructure, a first in the city of Omaha. Both quantitative and qualitative data will be utilized to track ridership and engagement of stakeholders along the corridor. We've worked closely with businesses and property owners along this stretch of Harney, as well as Park Omaha and Metro Transit, so that we may track and establish best practices for curbside management, including multiple bus stops, parking meters, and property access drives. We will continue these efforts throughout the term of the pilot. The temporary nature of the infrastructure allows us to quickly adapt to issues that may arise in these areas, as well as help coordinate the extensive current and anticipated construction along Harney Street. Existing data indicates Harney is one of the most traversed corridors in the metro for active transportation, including bicycles and e-scooters. As you may know, a permanent installation of this nature had been identified in previous capital improvement programs. Projects can be removed from a CIP for multiple reasons, often in large part due to funding source not only for the construction of the improvements, but also their ongoing operation and maintenance. The city and administration has long recognized the need for multimodal transportation support in Omaha. We have adopted a fix-it-first mentality, recognizing that public transit and active transportation are just as susceptible to the conditions of our road, if not more so. Thanks to this council and the public support of the 2020 Street Preservation Bond Fund Initiative, we are now eager to advance other transportation initiatives. This partnership allows our community to install this bikeway infrastructure almost immediately. Construction will start yet this spring. We will also establish best practices for the operation and maintenance of this kind of infrastructure, including restriping lanes, repair and replacement of bollards, and snow and ice removal. Best practices will include the necessary budget for ongoing support of this kind of infrastructure. On behalf of the Mayor's Office and Metro Smart Cities, I want to thank our partners in this project, recognizing some of those in attendance who won't be speaking, but Scott Dobby with Omaha by Design and Matt Cruz with Lamp Rynearson, who are here to answer any questions. Thank you, Council, for your consideration, and I'll stick around for questions.
Thank you. I'll call Julie Harris. And then you're next, sir.
Thank you. I'm Julie Harris with Bike Walk Nebraska, 1905 Harney Street. We're very pleased that this is finally coming to fruition, and we've been working on this for a couple of years now, trying to get this together as a pilot, although, you know, COVID certainly set us back a bit, but we're very glad that we're moving forward now. It's a really exciting time to bring this to downtown, and we're looking forward to seeing the use. We're looking forward to engaging with various stakeholders along the corridor who we've already started hearing from, who are excited about it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hi, you'll have to excuse me, I'm not a public speaker, but my name's Douglas Stuckey. I live at 8405 Emmett Street, and this is in reference to item number 32, the paving of the street. And I'm 100% for it because I've been living on that street since 1982, 39 years. In 39 years, I hoped it would have been paved, but the people up the street, John and Evelyn Orr, fought it years and years, and you've probably heard their name. And you know, it's really ironic when they went to sell their house for retirement that they wished they would have, the street was paved. I mean, bottom line is I've been driving on it for 39 years, and look at the century we're in, and we need to have it paved. For what it's going to cost the homeowner on a 20-year loan, low interest, it's nothing. So I know a person up at the top of the hill has been saying, in contact with somebody on this board, saying the majority of the people are against it, and that's not true. The majority of the people on the street are for it, I think 51%. So please approve it. And 85th Street, I know the people on 85th Street were against theirs being paved, but that would be beneficial because Evans, Pinckney, 85th, and Emmett paved. It would bring us into this century. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm also speaking in support of item number 32, the Emmett Street project. My name is Lori Darby. I live at 8512 Emmett Street, which is at the very bottom of this Emmett Street project, and you can imagine. With this project started when Amy Melton was our city councilman in the driveway of our neighbor's house. She's very helpful in achieving some of the good partnership that I think we've had with the city council on this and with the mayor's office. We have a number of people on Zoom, my husband, Mark Darby, Catherine Manley, who are also here this afternoon. And I've lived at 8512 for 15 years. We're still considered the new kids on this block because most of the people have been there 20, 25, 30 years, or their kids took over their parents' houses. And I've witnessed firsthand the degradation of this street. When we first moved in, it was blacktop, and the city would come out if somebody called to fill a pothole. Then they stopped filling potholes, and the potholes got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then a few years back, I think 3 years back, the city demolished the street, pulverized it is what you called it, and that resulted in huge ruts. One afternoon, I watched a city garbage truck tilting into the rut in front of my house in the spring thaw of a couple years back, and Mark and I had to park on Pinckney and walk from 85th because we couldn't get into our driveway. We have an opportunity right now, and I agree with Mr. Stuckey that most of the, we've spoken with the people that signed the original petitions. They are all in support, so I don't know who this person has talked to, but he hasn't talked to me. And we are very much in support of you awarding this contract, getting this work done. As I said, this has been a real productive partnership with the city, and we neighbors are ready to make this happen. And so I just encourage you, we have an opportunity to leave this little piece Omaha better than we found it. Let's take that opportunity. Let's do that today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. And if you're registered by the video conferencing, we'll get to you just as soon as we get through the people in the chamber.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Ingalls. I'm in the Planning Department in the Community Development Division. I'm speaking on items 52 and 53, but primarily 52, which is a contract to award $250,000 to Together, Inc. of Metropolitan Omaha for the operation of a non-congregate homeless shelter. We also have Tina Murray and Cassie Barrett from Together and Heartland Family Service to also speak in favor of this contract. And I wanted to do that because I wanted them to be able to highlight for you all and for our city the impact that this program had over the winter to serve people experiencing homelessness. We were able to house far more families than normal, and on the very coldest days of winter, we were able to bring people in who had been staying unsheltered and did not want to go to Sienna Francis House or couldn't go to Stevens Center or Open Door because of the congregate nature and the impact that it may have on their health. We've also been able to keep some of the shelters with a lower census so that they could allow for more social distancing during COVID. And it's just been a really great collaboration between multiple organizations, between the city's CARES Act funds, and between philanthropy. So I wanted to highlight it and give them a chance to highlight the work that's been done because I'm really proud of them. Tina had pressed me time and time again for, Nicole, can we have funds to put people in hotels? And we found a way, and it quite possibly saved lives this winter. So thank you very much. And with 53, which is street outreach, typically the city cannot fund street outreach. We just don't have the funds. So with our CARES Act funds, we've been able to fund, I think, 5 positions for people to find folks who are unsheltered and get them connected to services and to housing, and it's made an incredible impact in our city. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name's Sarah Johnson, 2316 North 52nd Street. I'm here today in support of number 59, the Harney Street Bikeway. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, not ModeShift, not any other organizations that I've worked with regarding bikes over the years. But I'm here to encourage you not only to vote yes for this project, but to work towards its permanence. I'm grateful that we're finally to this point, but I do have concerns with the lack of transparency in the process and overall timeline. Specifically worried about its pilot status, since we've seen a lack of data collection, communication, and follow-through on previous pilot projects, specifically with bike infrastructure. The bike corral is what I'm talking about. Pete knows how much fun that was. We'll get to that in a second, but for now, I want to give a little background on the Harney Street project. So I thought I'd read from ModeShift Omaha's blog when we worked with the city to announce the project and put together a collaborative celebration. This was 9 years ago, April, almost to the date, April 2012. Okay, it says, Omaha is about to adopt an updated transportation master plan for our fine city, and we're throwing a party to celebrate our past accomplishments as we look forward to the future with hope for many more. We're working with the city to shut down the north 2 lanes of Harney Street between 26th and 24th to showcase how wonderful an active, walkable, bikeable, livable street can be. Priority number 1 on the master plan is to convert Harney Street from Midtown to the Old Market into a safe corridor friendly to multiple modes of transportation. The Market to Midtown connector is sure to be a wonderful addition to Omaha, end quote. I read that just to highlight how ModeShift worked with the city to present this new project all those years ago. 2012, we felt the momentum was building towards more bikeable, walkable infrastructure. We were particularly excited about Harney Street because it ranked at the very top of the city's own proposed priorities. Then the momentum shifted. First, this project was removed from the CIP without discussion or reasoning. Second, the only other bike-specific pilot project, the on-street bike corral in Benson, was removed without any data collection to prove its success or failure, and there was no communication before it was removed with a bike locked to it. This track record gives me little faith in pilot projects. I reached out to councilors Jerem and Festerson. I don't know if that'll show up, but that's a...
It'll focus automatically.
Eventually. All right. So I reached out to councilors Jerem and Festerson. Thank you, Chris, for getting back to me. You suggested I talk with Mr. Anderson, and he also responded, so thank you. But I still have questions that are unanswered. We keep hearing about the private dollars and the amount of $250,000 that's coming from philanthropy, nonprofits, not the city of Omaha. So I still want to know, what type of financial commitment is the city making here? Why is this not a city priority? And why would we let it be removed? It's currently scheduled for removal in 2022, the end of September, and we know it's going to just cost that much more to reinstall down the road. It's inefficient use of our funds. One email from Mr. Anderson, or one line from Mr. Anderson's email says, a permanent commitment would have to come out of programming in a very tight CIP budget in the future. Doesn't sound to me like we're looking forward to this actually being a permanent fixture, and I'd really like to make sure that we work to have it planned and built for permanence from day one. Don't even know why it needs to be a pilot, because we already know that ridership goes up when there's safe, connected, protected places to ride. We know how this will work, and we can look to countless examples globally. Protected bike lanes increase ridership and decrease crashes. We also know that people on bikes don't do damage to our crumbling streets in the same way cars do. We know that bikes are better for the environment. We know that in order to retain and attract talent, we must lower our dependency on car ownership. We need to act more boldly when it comes to climate change, street safety, and brain drain. Bikeable, walkable, vibrant places actually tackle all of these issues. So today, I'd like you to not only approve this project, improve what we're doing as far as commitment to building more. We cannot afford to wait 10 years for each pilot project. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Olson, you're very, very patient. Come on up.
My name is LaVon Stennis Williams. I reside at 8919 North 56th Avenue. I'm speaking in the capacity as an opponent against the agenda item agenda item 50. I'm not here to speak against Joe Stothard. I'm here to speak for the need for the city of Omaha to recognize its inclusive and diverse community. I'm asking you to consider naming the station house 31 after Matthew O. Ricketts. Mr. Ricketts, or Dr. Ricketts, was born 5 years after slavery had ended. 5 years before slavery had ended. He was born to enslaved parents. In 1980, he came to Omaha to attend the medical school. He graduated, having worked as a janitor to pay his tuition. He was elected as the first African American to the Nebraska legislature. And he went on to push for the city of Omaha in 1895 to start their first black fire company. And so you can imagine during this time frame when we're just a few years after slavery, this man has taken upon himself to push for diversity, but he did not stop there. As the nation was wrestling with the end of slavery and the Reconstruction period, and many southern states were enacting Jim Crow legislation to prohibit black people from becoming part of first-class citizenry across this country, it was Dr. Ricketts who pushed for the state to adopt its first civil rights law. And Nebraska and Omaha was far ahead of most northern cities across the country because they established the first civil rights legislation in 1885. And what that did then was slow the progress of Jim Crow legislation. He went on to push for a more inclusive and a more diverse community. The fact that at this time frame, when we were just coming out of slavery, that he was able to put forth a fight to allow for us to name or get the first Black fire station speaks volumes about his right or his ability or his qualifications to be honored with this commemorative naming. The Black firefighters, even they had to fight and work under segregated conditions, they rose to the occasion. They were oftentimes the first fire troop ordered to go into fires, and they were the last ones out. Now, the city of Omaha continues to this very day to struggle with issues impacting the Black firefighters. But I cannot think of a better way for you all to recognize the work of this Dr. Ricketts, the progress the city has made, and your commitment that you said last summer to having a more diverse and inclusive community and city by naming the fire stations after him. With all due respect to Dr. Stothard, I recognize why you're doing it. But this is a chance for you now to rise above just honoring someone with the commemorative naming, but recognizing the work of Dr. Ricketts. We have enough buildings in Omaha named after white men. It's time for us to start, as a city, start putting our actions toward what we keep saying we are. Last year, you all professed that you were going to do more to make this community more inclusive, more diverse. It can start today with your voting to name Firehouse 31 after Dr. Matthew O. Ricketts. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Olson?
Thank you, Council President, Council members. Dan Olson, Omaha Fire Department, 1516 Jackson Street. With all due respect to Dr. Ricketts and certainly the Fire Department's quest to be mindful and always improve in terms of our diversity and inclusion, I want to speak as a proponent to item number 50 to commemoratively name Fire Station 31 in the honor of Dr. Joseph Stothard. Give you a little history on Dr. Stothard and his interaction and his influence on the Omaha Fire Department. Having served as the Omaha Fire Department's medical director for just under 20 years and as a medical director in our great community for Epley Airfield, Douglas County 911, and Metro Community College, Dr. Stothard worked to enhance the model by which the Omaha Fire Department and regional EMS systems operate under today. Dr. Stothard's contribution to the development of basic and advanced life support protocols in the state of Nebraska, the city of Omaha, and surrounding regions has and will continue to save countless lives as we move through time. There is no doubt that Dr. Stothard's influence has enhanced the Omaha Fire Department's ability to provide quality care and to the many thousands of patients that we are called to serve each year. With that said, I am a proponent and actually the applicant for this resolution, and I would respectfully request that you honor the application in commemoratively naming Fire Station 31 in Dr. Joe Stothard's honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chamber who has not spoken on the consent agenda resolutions who wishes to speak?
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Bird Street. I want to speak on 49, the resolution that the Harney Street Bikeway Pilot Project Maintenance Agreement between the City of Omaha and Metro Smart Cities be approved. I think that the situation with transportation with the bike is a public safety issue. So we need more space for bike lanes and programs and infrastructure that facilitates transportation on the bike. I am here because I've fallen off my bike, not because of me, but because where I was going. And when you fall off your bike, it's painful. I landed on the handlebars one time, and I couldn't laugh for like a week. So I do think that This is a public safety issue, and I encourage the powers that be to do more about biking transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Excuse me. Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, 68132. I'd like to speak against 49 and 50. First of all, number 49. I believe that's an ordinance that, like a lot of other things, you get the camel's nose out of under the tent, and pretty soon it's all over Omaha, and the taxpayers are getting higher property taxes for it. So I'm against that. And in all due respect to this lady, I don't have a problem in the morning with hearing the people that represent us or the people in the audience, but in the afternoon I seldom understand any of you because the volume has changed, but you're the same person there as this morning. And you people really don't set up to the microphone. So I don't hear a lot of that in the afternoon session. So I didn't quite understand all that. But I have been told I was out of order a number of times. I don't think number 50 was a proclamation or a resolution, and it says nothing about former black firefighters, which I respect all police, all firemen, whether they're black, white, or Indian, or woman, or male. But I would have been called out of order for talking about something that's not on that printed agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Storr.
Okay?
We'll handle the parliamentary rulings. Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name's Scott Blake, 2316 North 52nd Street. And I'm speaking on number 49. I'm a visual artist, so I like pictures. This is a drawing by Jeff Katurba that shows Omaha's bike policy and how it's confusing. The League of American Bicyclists have a bike-friendly state ranking, and Nebraska is number 49. We got a D in infrastructure, a C in education, a C in legislation, D in policies, and D in evaluation. This is what it's like to ride a bike in Omaha. It's our friend Dale, who had an interaction with someone experiencing road rage. They got out of their car, grabbed our bike, tossed it into the street, and when we told the police, there were 0 repercussions for this. This is a child riding a bike around a bike lane with trucks parked in it. When we contacted OPD, they said this is allowed since they are accessing their equipment to do work on the house. Same bike lane, same excuses. Also the same bike lane near Dundee Presbyterian Church, car parked in front of a fire hydrant. OPD said, not going to ticket a law-abiding citizen for going to church. Does that look like law-abiding? We have the firemen here today. So on the Omaha World Herald, May 16, 2017, there was a story about protected bike lane. Todd Fitzer said they cost $1 million per lane mile. And then recently, about the Harney Street bike lane, it was said it was going to cost $250,000 for 1.5 miles. The city engineer exaggerated the cost of the bike lane by 600%. Here's the bike corral that Sarah Johnson was talking about. At 11:30, Pete Festerson said, the bike corral is staying. They have been told to stand down. 5 hours later, bike corral is removed. Pete went on to tweet, unbelievable. I feel like we were lied to. Todd Fitzer, I have checked with my director, my traffic engineer, and the traffic shop maintenance, and none of us spoke with a representative from City Council. And then when talking about in the Harney Street bike lane, I noticed that they're going to be doing studies and data collection, and we've been down this road before. Marty Bialik said that in relation to the bike corral, that they're going to look at our data and do their own traffic studies. And then when asked later on, Todd Fitzer had to admit there were no studies. And then this trickles down all the way to the mayor when pressed on the lack of bike parking in Benson. She told the neighborhood association that there is room for 120 bikes. That would only make sense if they were unicycles. Another cartoon by Katurba. And then I'll end with one last lie. This is with the ADA ramps that we've been talking about on Ames Street. And Todd Fitzer told us that they were repaired in 2020. And so I went back on Google Street View. This is before the repair in 2015. This is after the repair in 2016. And he recently said, Todd Fitzer said, "I'm not always popular, but I am always honest. Honest men don't tell you how honest they are. Con men do."
Any other speakers in the chamber? Chief Kanger.
Good afternoon. Deputy Chief Ken Kanger, Omaha Police Department, 505 South 15th, and proponent item 57, the high-intensity drug trafficking area grant. Just to summarize briefly, the police department and the city of Omaha have been a benefit of this grant since probably 1996, 1997. This grant focuses on drug trafficking organizations, large-scale drug trafficking organizations, the production, the distribution of drugs, preventing them from coming in the city of Omaha. It's a regional effort. It's a state, local effort. It's also a national effort, and even actually outside the national borders. It helps us augment our investigative and operational costs. It also helps us with intervention and prevention and training. We have a retired narcotics officer, Kevin Donlan, who goes out and teaches in the schools, so it is fundamental to keep the drugs out of the city of Omaha. Recently, we had an investigation that went over 3 to 6 months, and 55 pounds of methamphetamine was recovered. It usually focuses on methamphetamine, fentanyl, which obviously is impacted with the increased opioid epidemic, cocaine, and things of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the chamber wishing to be heard? Consent agenda resolutions. All right, let's proceed to the video conferencing on items 24 and 25. We have Big Red Keno available if there's any questions, so we'll go to item 32. Proponents Catherine Manley and Karen Cameron, who are teaming up for one conference. Welcome to the City Council. We'll need your names and addresses and then your testimony on item 32.
All right. Hello. My name is Catherine Manley, and my address is 8402 Emmett Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68134, and I'm speaking on the agenda item number 32. I am speaking today to let the Omaha City Council know I am wholeheartedly for the street improvement district from North 83rd Street to end Emmett Street project. This has been an ongoing issue with Emmett Street for many years. Amy Milton was actually our City Council representative when we had our first meeting in regards to creating the SID for Emmett Street. I want to thank you, Amy, for all you did, and also coming out to a meeting we held at a residence on Emmett Street a few years back in August. I feel it would be in the best interest of everyone's safety to have the SID completed to make Emmett Street safe. We currently have some pretty deep ditches along Emmett Street that are not safe. We have had cars go into these ditches and get stuck. Also, it is very dangerous to walk our street at night when you cannot see where the ditches are due to the grade of the street and not enough light. I feel the mayor and the city council are trying very hard to help the citizens who live on unimproved streets that are not up to city standards. The term for the loan has been expanded from 10 years to 20 years. The city will pay a portion of the cost. Our city council representative, Pete Festerson, has been extremely helpful in the way he answers our emails in a very speedy and timely manner. He told my husband and I he even drove Emmett Street to see its condition. I want you to know how much I and other residents appreciate your concern and help in getting this SID approved, Pete. My husband, Roger Manley, has been in contact with many of the residents on Emmett Street in the last couple of weeks, and we feel that we do have a majority in favor of the SID. And on a more personal note, I would like to praise and thank the City Council for allowing the citizens of Omaha to be able to present and speak to the City Council through Zoom meeting. I could not come down to City Hall due to receiving chemo treatments right now for breast cancer, as my immune system is too low to attend any large group functions, even with social distancing. I hope the Zoom meeting becomes a permanent option. In closing, I want to reiterate, I am for the street improvement district for Emmett Street, which is from North 83rd Street to End. And I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to do a quick hello to Pete Festerson. I truly appreciate all you do for our district. Thank you.
Thank
now
you.
would you like Karen to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Welcome, Karen.
I'm Karen Cameron, and I live at 8413 Emmett. And I thank you for allowing us to share about our street. I used to be one of the new kids on the block, but I've lived on Emmett Street for almost 32 years now. When we first moved there, it was a blacktop street. And eventually, when the city stopped doing repairs, it became almost undrivable. 2 years ago, it was pulverized and graded, but they also put in ditches on both sides of the street. And I would wager a bet that the ditch at the end of my property is probably the deepest. I'm 75 and I still mow my own yard. And I am concerned that one of these days my mower and me are gonna end up in the ditch.
Well, we don't want that.
Thank you. Anyway, a culvert was also put in. A section of my driveway was taken out and the city put the culvert in, and along with the ditch. Well, there was a dip between the street and my driveway. So last year I lugged a dozen 50-pound bags of river rock and put it at the end of my driveway. But this year, most of it has washed down and the culvert is also plugged. So even though I don't really want to spend the money, I think it'll be worth every dime to have a new street put in. And I think it'll be beneficial for everyone on our street. So just thank you so much for considering this.
Thank you. We'll now move to Mark Darby. Okay, he gave us a note that he's fine. We'll move to item 43, Duncan Ackerman. He's available to answer questions. And the last item we have speakers registered for is item 52, Cassie Barrett, and then followed by Tina Murray. Cassie, you're recognized.
Hi, I'm Cassie Barrett with Heartland Family Service. My address is 1941 South 42nd Street, and I am a proponent for agenda item 52. My team has been working with Tina Murray's team from Together Inc. at the non-congregate shelter, trying to find permanent housing solutions for those folks that are in our shelter. And it's just been a really tremendous project to be a part of, and to see how many people we've been able to help. A lot of our folks are older or have different health conditions that put them at a much higher risk for COVID, and the non-congregate shelter really allows them to be safe and not have to check into a traditional shelter or be sleeping outdoors. And so that's why I'm a proponent.
Thank you. We'll next move to Tina Murray. Tina, you're recognized. Hi, Tina. If you wish to speak, we have unmuted you. You'll need to. All right, well, we'll move on. Thank you anyway, Tina, and keep up the good work. That concludes the public hearing on the consent agenda resolutions. Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. We have a number of different issues there. I want to speak to maybe two or three of them briefly, and then I'm sure there may be some other questions from the council as well. First to item number 32, which is in my district in the Keystone neighborhood. I want to thank all those folks that came down and testified on that. This is the street improvement district that's for consideration today. Its final measure, which is just the approval of the actual construction contract. And they're absolutely right. This issue goes back over 5 years when this area was represented by Ms. Melton and now has become part of my district in the last few years. And they're also absolutely right that the streets right there are terrible and absolutely do need to get fixed. And so I do commend them on engaging that process by which to have a positive conclusion. Just by way of background for my fellow council members, there has been, unfortunately, some disagreement on the street recently, just because I think the cost came back a little higher than they were anticipating, given construction bids. In honor of that, or in recognition of that, I did ask them as a neighborhood just to come back to us and indicate if there is still majority support for this project to move forward. And I believe there is. For your knowledge, there are 16 parcels there, 15 owners, and about 6 of those parcels do have concerns now, but clearly that's not a majority. And clearly we've heard from the majority here today who supports moving forward. So I think it is important we do that today. As they also noted, there's an adjacent street, which is 85th Street, that had just started to go through a similar process, but it was in the protest phase, not the construction phase. And that has been protested out because all 4 property owners there do not want to proceed. But that does not impact 85th Street, or Emmett Street, I'm sorry. And it's my belief Emmett Street should move forward today as well. I did also want to recognize Ms. Stennis, who's here on item number 50. I appreciated our conversation this morning and the history lesson you gave us there about Matthew Ricketts. I'm very interested in that story. This is not that the fire station today is not in my district, but there is one coming in my district. In fact, the next one should be relocated in my district. I see Chief Olson has already left, but regardless of what happens today, I want you to know I'm interested in that story and in that potential and in that prospect in that instance. Lastly, number 49, I want to address that too. And maybe I'll have Kevin and Julie come down, if you would, to talk a little bit about the bike lane. I do see it as very important to the future of our community to have alternative transit opportunities. This is a project, as has been noted, is kind of a long time in coming. We would have hoped it would have been done in 2016, but it wasn't. I do appreciate the private donor who stepped up to get us to this point here today, and your work with Metro Smart Cities, and Julie, your work with Bike Walk Nebraska. So I'm supportive of it, but I also want to make sure this becomes permanent. In fact, if it was up to me, I'd say let's make it permanent today. But I understand we're going and we're attempting to do with the study and data collection and figuring out the best configuration going forward, presumably for 2022 and 2023. Can you talk a little bit more about the data you're going to collect, what you're hoping to see, what is success, and then how do we make it permanent in 2022 and 23?
Yeah, thank you. Kevin Anderson, City of Omaha Mayor's Office. The agreement attached to an exhibit are relatively broad metrics for success of the pilot, some of the things we're going to be evaluating. Certainly ridership, an increase in ridership based off of baseline data on bicycle counts, e-scooter counts. We'll all go to drive to see, as indicated and as expected, that with protected infrastructure, we will see increased ridership. But we'll also be taking a look at things like potential conflicts with the infrastructure itself or with commuters of all modes along the corridor. So we'll be looking at potential conflicts with vehicles, with pedestrians, amongst the active transportation that would be happening within this bikeway. But in doing so, we'll also complement that with a lot of qualitative data, including surveys of riders on the corridor, certainly direct interaction with property owners and business owners along that corridor to get their interaction, because as this is new infrastructure to the City of Omaha, it's also going to be new to those businesses. And Harney Street, as you know, along this approximate 3-mile stretch, has a lot of varying uses, from residential to heavy commercial and large office, as well as service, restaurant, and any number of things who have varying degrees and needs of direct access. We're going to be seeing service trucks maneuver in this, backing into loading bays and things like that. So those are all the things we anticipate getting some qualitative data through surveys and direct interaction with a lot of those property owners. So high level, yes. I would be cautious to really, very clearly define metrics, because as we've seen over the course of the past year, for example, there's a lot of external potential impacts that could impact ridership. I'm not quite sure we've returned back to normal commuting patterns back in the downtown core. So if we were to try to set a benchmark goal for ridership, I'm not sure we'd hit that, just because of the change that we've seen in commuting patterns. With a lot of potential users along the corridor and in our downtown who still haven't returned back to the office. So commuting patterns through no fault of, or no expectation of anything that could be contemplated in something like this can change on any number of factors. Even a bizarre weather season could impact potential ridership and active transportation. So yeah, admittedly, yes, they are high-level metrics, but I'm confident that we've got multiple parties and partners working in good faith to make this a success.
And would it be accurate to characterize it, this data collection and this measurement, in the respect that it's not a question of whether it's going to stay or go. It's a question of have we designed it correctly? Is it functioning the way we want it to function? As we seek to make it permanent. Is that an accurate characterization?
Absolutely. I can't stress enough the need for establishing data and best practices for just operation and maintenance of something like this. We know now that we don't necessarily have the right equipment for things like snow removal relating to infrastructure in a protected bikeway like this. So as a part of this pilot, we'll be working with private contractors and being able to see what type of equipment works best, for example, for proper snow removal for this kind of this. So those are all things relating to operation and maintenance that we're going to be establishing as best practice, trying to utilize data to help inform those decisions, absolutely.
Okay. And Julie, did you want to address that too?
Sure, and I also have a photo here so you can get a visual of, hopefully I know how to do this right, what we're talking about.
You need to stand it all the way up.
Oh.
There you go.
There we go. Success is going to look different for different folks. As we've talked to different stakeholders along the corridor, I think Holly would tell you the downtown folks are very excited about this. It's been brought up that this extra layer of protection between the bike lane and the street will also create more protection between the street and the sidewalk, so the pedestrians will be safer, and the downtown folks are excited about that. Our friends at the Bank of the West across the street from City Hall are excited that perhaps this protected bike lane will not only help with biking, but will help with cars coming out of the parking garage and cutting through their drive-through to get going south on 20th Street, and they've had to, repair their drive-through and some infrastructure on their private property because of that behavior. So, it's going to look different in terms of success for different folks, but certainly we're excited about how it's going to improve safety, and we know from experience that folks are going to be reluctant to bike if they don't feel safe, and this layer of protection that between the bollards, the flexible bollards you see here, and the parallel parking that will be floated out from the curb and now a little bit farther out here will create that safe zone that people will feel more comfortable riding. So including not just commuting, but coming down for events, coming back down to downtown. It has a lot of variety that's going to attract people, and we're excited to see it come into play.
And obviously, given your mission, you would agree with the notion of making this permanent. It's just a matter of how we do it, correct?
Yeah, I think, this is the best practice right now in bike lanes is to have this protected facility. It's going in all over the country and all over the world. And this is what we'd like to see in Omaha. Of course, we're just getting started with this pilot, but we're really not going to see the true reflection of what this could be until we get sort of a network going. So being able to go east and west on Harney will be a great first step. But we also need to get a basic network going to really realize the full potential.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. This would just be a first step, but it'd be a pretty big first step. We've been waiting for a long time, so I'm anxious to see it happen. I did, as Mr. Anderson I think knows, request that this do become permanent in 2022, 2023, once we know the data you're describing, and we know exactly how we want it to be configured and how we want it to be constructed permanently. I have requested $3.5 million in 2022 and 23 for that to happen. That's about the number that was previously expected in 2016. So I know we don't know those numbers exactly yet, but I think that's a reasonable thing to budget for in those years once we do have this information. And so I'm hopeful that I'll see that in the CIP when it does get submitted to the council later this summer. And that would, in the same year, match $3.5 million we were successful in getting in there to extend the Keystone Trail north to Lake Cunningham, which now has a new loop around it, and therefore would be a nice north-south connector, as well as this east-west connector, a little bit different in nature, but would attach Cunningham Lake all the way down to Offutt Air Force Base and be a huge improvement to our trail system too. So I'm hopeful we can get both those done at that time, and have requested that occur. So thanks for your advocacy, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks, we appreciate that. And I would also say that in terms of a future project for this, Lamprecht Nearson has been a terrific partner with us to getting the plans put in place, doing the analysis of where this needs to be and how it needs to be designed. So I'm hopeful that since a lot of this upfront work will have already been done, that it will make your lives easier if you get to that point, and we hope that you will, to make it permanent. So,
thank you. Thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Gray, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of things I want to say specifically about item number 50. Number one, I would have liked to have known that this was going to be on the agenda prior to hearing about it on Facebook. So that's something I need to continue to address with people within government here, because sometimes we don't know about things, and then we get blindsided when they come up. So my concern is about not knowing about it, but that's something that I'll take care of personally a little bit later on. Secondly, in talking about Mr. Matthew Ricketts, Ms. Dennis Williams, I don't disagree with you, but here's what I'm thinking. A commemorative name change for an individual of such stature doesn't seem to be enough to me. And so I would like to continue the discussion about something greater than a commemorative name change for an individual that has such significance and has done the kinds of things that this individual did. I'm going to support this because I do not want to be in a position, and I wouldn't want to have any other council member in this position either. I'm not going to address another council member's district as to what the name change should be for a fire station or any other building in another council member's district without seeking that council member's support. So those are the things that I needed to say about item number 50, but I do intend to support it. And I will be thinking more about Mr. Ricketts and perhaps maybe something more than a commemorative name change on a fire station. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Vice President Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. There we are, so you can hear us in the back. So yes, item number 50 here, what we have is like we've already talked about, a commemorative sign that will be placed at Fire Station 31. And it's very important, but what's even more important is what this fire station brings to the community that's not being discussed. It will affect a wider area of protection that's desperately needed, because the fire station that's currently there on 25th and L should have been gone a long, long time ago. As this has worked its way through the CIP, I've talked to many firefighters, generational firefighters, that still to this day don't believe this will happen. So that's really the discussion that should happen. And Councilmember Gray is exactly right. I did not hear of Mr. Ricketts until this previous week, or this past week, and he's exactly right. What he's brought to the table is unique and should be recognized. But I think what's been lost in this naming is the process. And we've heard Chief Olson say that it came from him. It probably goes to law, where a resolution is drafted. I'm sure it goes to planning. Well, I'm positive it goes to planning because my chief of staff called me and said, hey, Vinny, this fire station, this name change that the commemorative name change we're talking about is in your district, so we need you to sign off on it. So Director Fanslaw, who's back there, actually met me at a ball game down at Brown Park, and I signed off. And I thought it was a great idea. And for the simple fact that if you read through where our fire department safety-wise is today compared to where it was in the early 90s, a direct result of Dr. Stothert and his accomplishments and his work with the city of Omaha has made our firefighters safer today than where they were. And that's exactly what Fire Station 31 does for the firefighters who were there. It makes them safer in all aspects of their firefighter duties. Of course, it doesn't mean that anybody's that's recognized as less or more. And let's not forget, too, the firefighters over the course of our city who have lost their lives in the line of duty. They're very well recognized as well. We haven't forgot about them. But what we have here in front of us is that process that, like I said, got through planning. It comes to the city council with or without my initials on it to come to a vote before us, all 7. And that's where we are now. This is in my district. I fully support this. I would appreciate my colleagues if they would support it. And we'll move forward with the Fire Station 31 that's desperately needed for South Omaha. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just make a couple comments first on Dr. Ricketts. In that, to me, it's disappointing that Ms. Dennis Williams left because I think she has a point to be made and a recognition that the city's long probably overdue in seeing come to fruition. But supporting this resolution for commemorative naming for Station 31 does not mean that it's to the exclusion of the other or in any way disrespectful to the other. And, I was thinking along the lines of Councilmember Gray's, we have Station 34 in my district and the downtown station in my district, and I didn't think naming a station would be big enough honor for Dr. Ricketts. But I'd love to have something in terms of the city recognizing his contributions. And so that's a conversation that we should have, and we should involve the Black Firefighters Association and the chief, the administration, and people from the community like perhaps Ms. Dennis Williams. So I support this resolution recognizing Dr. Stothert. In terms of the protected bike lane, this has been, in terms of the city's commitment, if you want to call that, to building infrastructure to support alternative transportation, one that on one hand you get something, a spoonful of sugar, and on the other hand you get a spoonful of vinegar, it seems to me, because just as soon as you get something, it seems like you lose something. We take a step forward and then you take a step back. And I used to say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, it's hard to say that when it's a pilot, because what the donors giveth, they can stop funding. So I hope that our support for this project will translate into permanent infrastructure in our city. And driving into the downtown today from on 30th Street coming from North Omaha, dose 2 for those of you who are wondering what I was doing this morning, vaccination. The infrastructure just painted on North 30th Street for the bike lanes is not protected. And I thought to myself, well, it's nice that this is added. And it's nice that we're traffic calming and reducing lanes. But wouldn't have this been a nice opportunity to have additional protection? There is an added stripe for added distance, but Mr. Anderson, I don't think, and one of my big criticisms since I've been on this council is, government is good at spending money on studies. It needs to improve on spending money to actually do things. And if I wanted to know how to plow a bike lane, I'd call up the people in Minneapolis and ask them. That's what I would do. So we can study it, and I'm sure we will study it, and it'll give us great metrics. But I'd like to know what the people who already have these protected bike lanes in cold environments are doing. And I hope this does transform into permanent infrastructure. I'm not telling you anything I haven't told you personally. I'll see it when I believe it. And in a pilot, I'm still a skeptic. So I support this. It's a good step. I hope it's a step that doesn't take a step back, that it keeps moving forward. And even though my days come to an end here soon on the council, I can assure you that one of the issues of interest consistently for my constituents is alternative transportation. And biking as a means of that is at the top of the list. Mass transit and pedestrian-friendly complete streets are other big things, but if the administration's serious about this, we need to be planning now for 2022 and 23, as Councilman Festerson suggested. So I encourage that conversation to move forward. No further lights. We had a motion and a second. Roll call.
No.
We didn't?
No.
It's 24 to 47.
24 to 47, 49 to 59.
Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray.
Yes.
Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
All right, we'll call up item 48.
And we did email the amendment of the whole to everyone. Essentially what it's doing is it's changing who is authorized to execute and deliver the agreement on behalf of the city of Omaha.
The public hearing on item 48 begins at this time. Are there any proponents or opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 60, an ordinance levying a special tax and assessment on certain lots for sidewalk construction, group number 2020-01.
Public hearing on item 60 begins at this time. Are there any proponents or opponents? Come on down. Welcome.
Sean Gibson, Public Works Construction, 5225 Dayton Street, Omaha. Just here for any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents or opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 61, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a purchase order to DPC Industries, Inc. in the amount of $733,600 for the purchase of bulk shipments of sodium hypochlorite.
Public hearing on item 61 begins at this time. Are there any proponents or opponents on this item? The public hearing is closed.
Item 62, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a purchase order to Southern Ionics in the amount of $472,500 for the purchase of sodium bisulfite.
Public hearing on item 62 begins at this time. Are there any proponents or opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 63, an ordinance to approve a 3-year contract with River City Recycling for disposal of rubbish that is not accepted at the weekly solid waste collection.
Public hearing on item 63 begins at this time. Are there any proponents or opponents?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette, 68132. I'm basically opposed to this because I myself have had to take so-called rubbish quite a ways down south in order to get rid of it. I have a truck, but a lot of residents of Omaha don't have a truck. They have small cars, maybe don't have a lift gate, don't have room behind their front seat to put rubbish, but the city doesn't pick it up anymore. And they don't really tell us where to take it per se. So let's quit shifting the cost of the rubbish and garbage program over to the property owner. Because people that live in apartments and hotels, they don't have to take care of it. Somebody else does. Thank you.
Are there any other proponents or opponents on this item? The public hearing is closed.
Item 64, an ordinance to acquire private property for the construction of the Missouri River Omaha Flood Protection Project, Phase 3 improvements.
Public hearing on item 64 begins at this time. Are there any proponents or opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 65, an ordinance approving the 27 Leavenworth Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Agreement.
The public hearing on item 65 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette, Omaha 68132. Once again, I'm opposed to anything TIF related right now because I really don't think we've still understood it well or explained it well enough to the citizens of Omaha. Haven't really proven that it's not a giveaway to some developers who may not stay in Omaha. And I'd like to submit some information along with this item, but it also has to do with other city business.
Does that conclude your testimony? Yes. Thank you. Are there any other opponents on item 65?
Excuse me, I'm not quite through.
Well, then why did you say you were?
I'm sending the email version of that also so that the links can be attached. But I really would like to see from the World Herald article that was, again, recently, talking about TIF and one of the large hotels and stuff. You know, I finally gave up my subscription to the World Herald because this is an example. They're not really clear about some of the issues that have been brought up many times here about TIF. They seem to be an arm of the city council, perhaps, and of developers. Because a lot of people I talk to outside of this place, where I can talk more than a minute or so, they don't understand it either. They seem to understand it the way I do. That the people that are going to pay the higher property tax are the people that live in the area of that development. Now, I believe the last part of that article refers to that mall that's way out west. It was such a wonderful mall, but now it's pretty much gone. There's one or two stores still there. But we're probably going to pay to demolish a lot of those buildings again. And I'd like to know if the person that owned all that property, if it was all the same person.
You're going to have to get on top
if they actually did pay the property taxes for that. And now we got to do it all over again? Thank you. I'm just saying we'd like more transparency.
Thank you. As a matter of record, I would remind the public that the city's tax increment financing documents are available online for those who are interested in educating themselves, who wish to read it, and thereafter, the planning department has made themselves available numerous times to explain it. Next item.
Item 66, an ordinance approving the Leavenworth Point Commerce Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Agreement.
The public hearing on item 66 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Oh, yeah. Good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning, and again, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents?
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. I'm a proponent. I've noticed that the TIF committee has been supporting more projects for affordable housing. And that's something that people need to be talking about so that we're informed that the TIF committee is doing a good job. I'm a critic of the committee because of the CRA map. And also that I do think that TIF projects increase property taxes for residents or properties that aren't directly in the proposed area for the proposed TIF project. And those kind of confusions, particularly on the property taxes evaluation, hopefully are going to be cleared up next year when the county assessor gives a presentation to the county board. It's going to be about 45 minutes. And that's one of the things that I would ask the county assessor if properties adjacent to a TIF project are impacted in so much that their property increases. But otherwise, I don't want to criticize today what the TIF committee is doing because there's been agenda items on affordable housing through the TIF setup. Thank you.
Are there any other proponents on this item? Are there any opponents on this item? Public hearing is closed.
Item 67, an ordinance approving the 22Q Senior Housing Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Agreement.
The public hearing on item 67 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning, on behalf of the project. I'm here for any questions you may have, and this is the second project on today's agenda with affordable housing component to the TIF program.
Thank you. And for the record, the other one was the 27 Leavenworth project. Right. Are there any opponents? Or are you a proponent? Come on down.
Rob Woodling, Foundations Development, 1886 South 126th Street. I'm the developer of the project. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any opponents to item 67? Public hearing is closed.
Item 68, an ordinance to add section 10-160 to 10-165 to chapter 10 of the Omaha Municipal Code entitled Economic Equity and Inclusion Plan.
Before we begin the public hearing on item 68, we've asked that the Human Rights and Relations Director and his department come down and make a presentation. I know there's Mr. Espinosa is registered to participate if needed online. Dr. Thompson, welcome.
Thank you. Franklin Thompson, Human Rights and Relations Department. Standing with me is Jared Anderson, the coordinator of the program. It became obvious, even when I was on council, we'd use a lot of acronyms, EEIP, SEB, AARP. I mean, you get all kinds of different acronyms, and people aren't quite sure what they mean. And so what I wanted to do was just give a quick overview of what EEIP is, and to break it down in a simple manner. Imagine a government that wants to build its city, and when it builds its city, it does things like brick and mortar, and it does things like bringing in new businesses to increase the tax base. But another way to build a city is also to make sure that the economic health of everyone in that city is good. And so we often say we want to compete with Denver or Kansas City or Des Moines or Wichita or whatever. And one way to do that is to make sure that we're not just top heavy in terms of building and building up the city. We want to reach out to the less represented areas of town, people that are poor, people that historically may not have always had a seat at the table. And that's what the Economic Equity and Inclusion program is about. It's about trying to build the city in more ways than just brick and mortar. And in particular, if you could think of EIP as being a big umbrella, and then under that, we have something that you're probably more used to hearing, and that's the SEB program, Small Emerging Business Program. But EIP wants to go beyond just saying use SEBs. We want to say, can you build a better workforce? And I know that's something that Councilman Palermo's been interested in, Councilman Jerem, Councilman Gray. I think everybody on the council, we have to build and encourage the business acumen among people who have abilities, but maybe they just don't know how. And so that's part of what we do. And then we also don't want to forget about our youth. Our young people, everybody does not fit in one funnel. Everybody doesn't go to college. Some people need to go into the trades. And I think one of the biggest mistakes Omaha ever made was the closing of Tech High School, which was chronicled and documented to be the best technical school between Chicago and LA. That's another story, and I won't get off track here. But what we want to do is let young people know that there are opportunities to do things other than becoming an accountant. And in fact, some of these individuals can make more money. I'm not sure if they can make more than an accountant, but I happen to know that in the city, greater area, Omaha area of Omaha, that there's a lack of people who do welding, for an example, okay? So what we're trying to do with EIP is to get those people who do businesses, who do contracts with the city, to join us in our partnership to grow that area, that group of people that have ability, but they don't always have a channel or a foot in the door or a seat at the table. And so what we did, if you remember back in February of this year, we passed a companion, you passed a companion legislation which encourages the use of apprenticeships. And so this one here is sort of like the twin sister of that, because we want to be able to make sure that my department has the teeth, the legislative teeth and the muscle to make sure that the program is running correctly, and that there are oversights and penalties if it's not run correctly. I'll step out of the way, and then I'm going to let my colleague talk about the other part of the report, which is how is the program going? Mr. Anderson.
Thanks, Doug. Jared Anderson, City Human Rights and Relations Department, 1819 Farnham. First off, thank you. I'm not as good as off the cuff speaking as Dr. Thompson is, so I timed it. It's 3 minutes and I'll be done. First of all, thank you, Bernard, if you're in here, for your help drafting this ordinance in such a timely manner and with considerations to our feedback. Thank you to Council President Jerem, Councilman Member Gray. You have sponsored the ordinance, and then thank you to the rest of the council for your considerations. Also, thank you, Dr. Thompson, for your grace and your support as I took over this program two years ago or so, and kind of helping me to navigate how this would come to be and understand City Hall a little bit better. First thing first, the EIP's purpose is, like Doc said, is to provide a platform of stewardship and compliance utilizing principles of economic equity and inclusion through actions. That's the big part. To generate sustainable growth and opportunities in Omaha for our small emerging businesses, our local workforce, and our youth, just like Dr. Thompson talked. The vision of the program, though, is to create a culture of economic equity and inclusivity. And the EIP is a catalyst for creating that type of culture here. In the times we live now, this program can be a unique tool that's able to keep a steady focus on the economically distressed areas in Omaha, like Dr. Thompson alluded to. So, for the individuals who still look puzzled when they hear the word EIP, this ordinance will help to bring some clarity. As Dr. Thompson also stated, it's a necessity to support and enforce the previous contractor provisions ordinance that already passed. A couple things we want to share for notables for the Economic Equity Inclusion Program. So in 2019, there were a total of 55 firms with an active EIP. In 2020, there were 65 firms. Through the first quarter of 2021, we now have 80 total firms with an active EIP. So as you can see, there's been some growth. We've increased from 32 to 35 consulting firms. We've gone from 33 to 45 construction firms. And we actually have our first services EIP with the FCC contract. From my perspective, managing these firms here quarterly and annually for over 2 years now, I have not only seen this growth and participation in the new contracts, but I've also seen these firms consistently improve on reporting better metrics on their EEIP reports. So generally speaking, there is much more of an impactful participation from these firms overall than when I started. And that equates obviously to more meaningful steps closer to the mission and the vision of the program to better equity and inclusivity in our distressed areas of town. So another couple quick notes. SEBs like Spencer Management, NL&L, and many others are actively mentoring the next wave of City of Omaha SEBs. I see the evidence of that in all of their metrics in all of their reports. Consulting firms like HGM, HDR, JEO, Olson, DLR, and dozens of others, they're engaging in youth with hundreds of hours of volunteerism and thousands of dollars in financial scholarships. Firms like Hawkins, Roloff, Rana, Lund Ross are actively engaging in the apprenticeship-style models and workforce development strategies in their EEIP plans, and I see each part of that as it comes in. The internships that turn into full-time work, the outreach and the promotion of the trades, which is a vital part of our city that Dr. Thompson alluded to also, is a big part of what the EEIP covers. Firms like FCC and Lund Ross, Western Engineering have a commitment to formerly incarcerated individuals and generating meaningful jobs for these guys and gals. Other city departments are always communicating with HR&R, and they're always supportive of the EEIP. There's a lot to do as far as the city goes still, but the EEIP becoming an ordinance is really a fundamental distinction that'll bring the city of Omaha to a platform of economic equity and inclusivity that is above others. Thank you.
And just one last thing, for people out in the audience or TV land, as my colleague Gary Gurnett used to say, up until now, we've been operating on a resolution, and all we're doing is codifying this and making it an ordinance now. And by doing so, it helps us to be able to do our job a little bit better and hold accountable what the purpose of the program is.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll open the public hearing to any proponents.
Jonathan Lathan, 4331 4th Street. Good afternoon, Council. I'm here to speak as a proponent of Item 68, Codifying the Economic and Inclusion Plan. Over the last few months, there's been a lot of focus from myself as well as the community on intentionality, especially when it comes to development and equity. I believe this plan is a step toward achieving both of those. There are 3 points in this plan which will be instrumental in continuing progress: expansion of the SEB, improvement of workforce development through inclusion, and providing opportunities for youth engagement. I agree with Dr. Thompson that opportunities need to be expanded for individuals who took non-traditional career paths. One of the most beneficial parts of this ordinance that I see is in the realm of the professional services. Ensuring that contracts over $100,000 are given to firms that provide architecture, engineering, land surveying, and landscape architecture can help retain the young professional demographic that we're trying to cultivate here in the city. With this intention, though, I'm hoping that the Equity and Inclusion Plan also addresses the economic disparities across the city, especially in Districts 2 and 4. Let's ensure these SEB contracts and services focus on investment in the truly blighted areas of the city that have been looking to develop infrastructure at the same level as the rest of Omaha. Also, the accountability protocols must be put in place and enforced and upheld. Dr. Thompson stated that he wanted the program to have teeth, and I hope that the council shares that same sentiment when it comes to noncompliance. One thing I didn't see, though, is what hiring metrics are to be followed with the contractors when submitting these plans, and I'd like that language to be placed in the document. That way, we can uphold the pledge of transparency that the city and HR department are standing on. Again, this Equity and Inclusion Plan is an intentional step that is necessary to move the city forward. Let's make this into an ordinance and work to build a stronger community together. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents?
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. I want to thank the director, Dr. Thompson, and his staff for working on this. I understand that they maintain the regulations. I am concerned that they need to be placed in the correct place or the best place, and not just be guidelines. one thing I would add to this discussion is that when the city has a contract with these businesses, that they get paid quicker. I think that would probably help their business model, and that the city should be supporting or wanting to work with organizations and businesses that want to protect their employees, that they want to work with people that are providing livable wages here in Omaha. And I think that this is going to be a step towards that direction. And one last thing I want to add to the discussion is the protecting employees and working with organizations that protect employees. Put that up here. We have here a comment from Senator Bernie Sanders that as labor union membership declines, income inequality explodes. This is like the last 80 decades. You can see here in this graph that the unions that protect employees has dropped in number, and the income inequality here in red has increased. And I think that here in Omaha, we have an opportunity to provide jobs that that are in livable wages, jobs that pay livable wages, so that we can cover all of our bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Vice President Palermo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I think that was from 47, but or sorry, 67, but I'll speak on this one as well. Sorry, my screens are all over the place. So anyway, Dr. Thompson, Jared, thanks for always bringing it. I mean, when you show up, it's always good news, right? It's always for the good of the city. President Jerem, Councilmember Gray, for bringing this forward. And speaking of TV land, I'm sure Mr. Gradan is watching, because he called me just this past weekend with an issue that Public Works got taken care of very quickly for him. So I'm sure he's watching. We'll tell him hi. But on this, it's great. It's going to work. We've been talking forever about it, right? This process, but it reminds me, and I know it's been a couple meetings since I brought it up, but it reminds me how important the electronic bidding system will be for every department. I mean, I can't say it enough. Everybody in this room knows how important this is going to be, and even now more. So we need an electronic bidding system here in the city of Omaha desperately. Thank you for what you do. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank my co-sponsor, Council President Chris Jerem. This is one of the things we've been pushing on almost since we started on the council together, and we've gotten kind of to this point. But I will say this, in terms of diversity and inclusion and being intentional about it, I can say for a fact that I have in some fashion or another talked to every council member on this dais, and there is not a single council member that doesn't think the intentionality of diversity and inclusion is not one of the most important issues that we face. So while I thank my co-sponsor, I also thank the rest of this council because there is no one here that doesn't see diversity and inclusion as a significant point that we need to get to. I also like to thank Bernard Endenbosch, our city attorney, and Dr. Thompson and your people, man. There are no words to describe how hard you work and how hard, we continue to move this small emerging business ordinance that started, just a little bit, and now we're at a point now where we're really doing some serious business. But I also wanted to thank Mr. Lathan as well, because when we're talking about issues like this, and I would use a metaphor similar to the one that Council President uses when we're talking about the analogy of a baseball game. When we passed the small emerging business ordinance and some of the things that we did most recently, we got ourselves pretty much to first place, and we're getting close to second. With this ordinance, I think we're going to be on second base. But Mr. Lathan, it is up to you and others in the community to continue to hold our feet to the fire, because there is more work that needs to be done. This is not a finished project. It's not a finished process, but we are light years away from where we were when we first started this program. So thanks to everyone here. This is going to be a step that'll move us at least to second base, Mr. President, and maybe even third if we can steal a base or two. But this has really been an effort that I appreciate from everybody that's in this room and some that are not in this room, and those who continue to push us to make us continue to do better. So thanks to everyone here. I look forward to supporting this next week. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Yes, this is currently a resolution, but as you build towards a culture in your city of economic inclusion, I believe that it's not until you have the force of law to allow enforcement of the law that you really don't have something embedded as a legal culture that then hopefully has ever expanding circles of growth and expansion, and this notion of making our city one that is available to all on an equal basis for opportunity. This grew out of this effort with, I like to say, my brother in arms, Councilmember Gray, about a trip we took together through North Omaha in my car to help awaken me in my eyes on a personal level to something I knew that had existed in North Omaha and other parts of our city. And I've told this story before, but it was very powerful. And it was seeing this man in the middle of the day on his porch looking out at a CSO sewer separation project that had workers that didn't look like him, making good wages for a good company that was just not something that would be accessible to him. And you didn't need to speak to the guy to know how hurtful that had to be, to know that your city on a $1 billion project was not working hard enough to build opportunity and inclusion. And that's when Councilmember Gray and I said, we're going to do something about that. And so thankful to have so much support from everybody on this council and from Director Stubbe and you as a council member, and now later as the HR&R director and your team, that we actually have done something about this. But yes, the metaphor for making gains in the ebb and flow of struggle I use often is baseball. And you can't advance your cause until you get on first base. And getting to second base is the force of law. But it's not until our city is truly open and accessible to all of its citizens, regardless of where they live, that our work won't be done. And while my days on this council are winding down, I'm thankful that so many, including the city legal department, were able to get this across the finish line in this ordinance before I go. So thank you to everybody, and thank you to my colleagues. And after I'm gone, those of you who continue on the torch, I challenge you to do as Councilmember Gray has said, to keep this moving. Thank you.
take a bite.
We'll move to item 18 at this time. We laid item 18 over to the end of the docket to see if the applicant appeared. Is there anyone here on item 18, the special designated license? Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Mr. President, seeing no one here appearing and seeing a lot of questions from our staff and from myself and from surrounding neighbors on this item, I would suggest we decline it today. I would not be supportive of going to 1 a.m. anyway, and they could, in reality, work with the clerk, irrespective of the city council, and their landlord there to have an event that goes to 11. So with that, I would motion to deny.
Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Non-action items, items 69 through 108, do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and/or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on agenda for consideration.
Roll call.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 4:01.